Here we are, another Faith and Life podcast. My name is Mike Weaver, lead pastor at St. Luke Lutheran Church in Gahanna, Ohio, and as always,
Greg
is
Osborne. I am the student pastor here at St. Luke.
yep. Here we are, end of July, and
It is the
before,
end of July. That's crazy.
it is. Before we know it, Greg, Christmas will be here.
Thank goodness.
Giving will be.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
It is the most wonderful time. I love Christmas.
I do too. I love summer, but school can happen again. It's fine.
I'm with you. Yeah. So here's a question. This is not the question I originally thought of to start us off with, but it came to my mind just now. What's your least favorite month?
Ooh, ooh.
Why?
Least favorite month? Easily January.
January. Oh, easily.
Easily.
Oh, yeah. Why is
Yeah.
that?
I I just think like you're off on you just come back from the break.
Yeah.
It feels like January is 3 months long.
Yeah.
You're in the dead of winter at that point. Like it's cold all the time. Because Christmas sometimes still you're not like fully winterized yet. Maybe you get a good snow earlier in December, but like January is where it's like, haha, here's all the snow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it feels like there's 48 days in January. There's no holiday to look forward to, like that's like, yeah, like not saying, but like there's little things, at least like February, there's Super Bowl, and if you like Valentine's Day, you have that. Then March, there's possibility of warmer days, and it's, St. Patrick's Day, like there's that. And November, you're still could have some good fall days, but you got Thanksgiving break and getting ready for Christmas. Like January just is like, what do you bring to the table, January? And I would say nothing. Like January just
What?
doesn't like it doesn't pull its weight around what all the other months are stepping up to the table, and January just is like, hey, I'm here.
I just have this picture of this the months all assemble at a on a stage. What do you bring to the table, January? And you before January can even say nothing. You don't bring anything. The
Exactly.
last 48 days.
I'm not wrong.
That's really funny. Uh, so mine is August. I've never liked August because August to me feels like work, right? Because growing up, it was, well, still is today, it's beginning of school,
Yep.
work. Early August when I was playing sports in high school and middle school, it was work. You got practice. You got 2 days. You got
Yep.
to work hard. You got to get after it. And yeah, and it's hot and it's humid and it just feels like August just drags and there's no besides one of our boys, his birthday is at the end of August. That makes August good for me. But otherwise, there's no holiday. Like 4th of July, Father's Day, that's awesome. June,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Memorial Day, that's awesome. Yay. But oh, and by the way, at the end of August, you have a we have it. Speaking of work, it's called Labor Day. It's a holiday, but
Yeah.
it's a work holiday. It's associated with work. And I get the point of Labor Day, but anyway, so there's a lot to August that I just like it just feels like it's an extra summer unnecessary month.
Tell me you don't have elementary school kids in your house anymore without telling me you don't have elementary school kids in your house anymore, because every parent listening to this podcast
Yeah.
is like, God bless August and
Because
going back to
we're
school.
going back.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I get it as a kid, but
Yeah.
parents that are like, man, and college football season starts up, like,
Yeah.
ooh, like but kids going back to school, choirs of angels are singing
There,
at the Osborne
there,
household.
and that was true. That was true for our boys. But then also the work of getting everything set up for them, and you got to get them to for it just let's just get through this. And even the sporting events don't really mean anything. Like preseason football, who cares? It's practice. We're just watching somebody
Oh,
practice
that's why I didn't say NFL, but college still starts a little. They start at the end of
at the
August
end
now,
of
so
the month.
We
Yeah,
get we get a taste, and that's it's been so long since the football seasons for me. So it's like,
yes.
just give me that little bit.
Well, speaking of those kids that you have in your house, you got two girls,
I do.
and right now you've got a group of dads that are walking through a book together about raising girls. And so that's what we want to talk about today. Just what's it like as a dad to raise girls?
Yeah.
So, yeah, what have you learned?
So we're going through this book. There's a group of like 8 dads, and it's called "Raising Worry-Free Girls," by Sissy Goff, who is a therapist out of a out of a basin. I want to say Nashville, Tennessee. Tagline is helping your daughter feel braver, stronger, smarter in an anxious world. And so like, well, the first thing like I've realized is we've done now two like parent style studies, both with like anxious in the titles. We did the anxious generation back in January because nothing else was happening in January, so I decided to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and now we're doing the raising worry-free girls, and it's interesting to look at it from the perspective of now like we're focusing in on just the girl aspect of you know of dealing with the worry, but the book also very much handles of like as much as it's talking to you about how to raise your girls and what to look for and stuff, but it's also talking to you as like how you as a parent, how you model things. It's very much, it's not like a, oh, your kid is like this, so like they need to do A, B, and C. It's like the kid probably picks up on their worry and anxiousness from you. So there was like statistically it's like 70% or I don't know what the number officially is like 70% though of every kid who's anxious has an over anxious parent. And I was like, all right, I don't need this in my life right now.
Yeah.
But I did, it need the but it like there's been some really clear helpful examples. And I was talking with the group, and one of the things that like so often we as parents, like we're trying to figure this out, and I don't have it figured out. The guys in the group don't have it figured out, but we're trying to do our best to say, like, what do we do and how do we model it as, godly parents and things like that. And one thing that like I've never thought about that like has been sticking in my mind the entire time we've done this store like this book study is the idea of how sometimes like wanting to validate our kids like will actually have the opposite effect. And what I mean by that of how oftentimes like trying to encourage them or like, no, you got this. Like when your daughter comes up to you and is like, I'm scared, I can't do this, like I'm no good at this, and like is telling you her emotions and her feelings about A, B, and C. And then we want to come in and kind of correct those and like put positive mindsets in there, which you would think like that's awesome. But in the midst of doing that, we then are sending signals to our daughter that her emotions and her opinions of herself aren't valuable and that she'll start to keep those in her mind rather than share because she says, well, if I tell my mom or dad I feel A, B, or C, they're gonna just say, well, no, that's not right. This is what it is. And if those don't line up, and so like by the times like if you're like, I'm scared, like I can't do this, like, yeah, you can, like there's nothing to be afraid of. You almost like diminish those feelings without like trying to raise. I was like, how often do I do that? Because I try my best to be like so encouraging. I'm like, no, you got this. Like, what do you mean you're not good at this? And there's ways to go around it. And I think like it's been able to like keep me in check a little bit of sometimes when I have these conversations with my with my daughters over to the summer break and things like when they come up like, why do you feel like rather than say no, that's not true, it's more like, why do you feel that way? Well, here's what I see. How can we get to like you see what I see kind of thing and like try to kind of bridge it without like diminishing and playing down our emotions. And I was like, that's something that like nobody wants to do that in real life. Like nobody wants to be like, oh yeah, your opinions of yourself don't matter. Like, like we wouldn't do that. But like it makes it tick for me find out I was like, oh man, am I doing that in my daily walk by trying to be so encouraging with them that I can almost like negate what they actually feel. And I was like, well, that's a gut check for me.
Yeah, that is really insightful. I mean, really insightful. I'm curious, like, is that more prevalent in raising girls than it is with boys.
That's what
Yeah.
Sissy had approached in this, and like this book is like it says, it's raising worry-free girls, so it
Right,
really
right.
is focusing in on the aspect of girls and how they process and dealing with
Yeah.
things like they call like the worry monster and kind of figuring out all those things. And so I think they internalize that more than where I think like where you're going with if a guy is boys or something maybe don't struggle with that as much of, but
Yeah,
it
I
could
think
be. I
that's
don't
true.
know.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, having raised boys, I think there is that difference that a boy might respond better to something like says, you know what, yeah, you're right. I got it. I mean, I can get this. And you just get this kind of feeling. And the dad can kind of lead that. Hey, well, let's go. And it's like the coach of a team. Let's get in that team fired up. But it does. But I think boys even have that too. And
Yeah.
now I think about it. I mean, there's that still that fear. I think to me, it's like without having to read the book, just by your description, it was like, oh, it's slowing down and walking beside that kid and going, hey, so tell me more. What's going on? I mean, what makes you so worried about this? What are you afraid of? And you could still say you got this, but it's now but first opening the door to what they're feeling like and what's causing all that. Is that what you're saying, Greg?
Yeah, but I think the reality is there's a way that we can and this kind of goes into some other parenting books too. Like we can talk to our kids and be parents, but having those conversations allows us to get to see where they're coming from and have those moments where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that this or this. And I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before, but if I have, oh well, it's good. Um, I was reading a parenting book because I read. If you've listened to the show or you know me, I read a lot. I try to read nonfiction, fiction, everything, but I try to read like bettering myself books. So I read a lot of parenting books too, and there was one time where I was talking about uh, how your kids can feel ganged up and stuff in moments. And I was like, what? And I had a real life moment of I was like, all right, I'm gonna talk to my daughter. Like, why is she acting this way in the moment? Like, I was like, I'm not gonna yell, I'm not gonna shout, I'm gonna just be like, hey, why do you react this way? And there was one of these times, like her and my wife, they were just having a time, and I being the supportive husband and father, I'm like, hey, don't talk to your mom like that. Like, this is how we need to do things, and it did not go as well as you would hope as you would those moments happen. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna talk to my daughter. I'm gonna talk to my oldest kid and just see what's up. And I sat there and talking like, hey, like, why do you react this way when this happens? I'm like, your mom tells you to do something, and then like, so I want to like, she goes, well, Dad, when you come in or mom comes in when the other one's already upset with me, and like you agree with them, it sounds like you guys are ganging up on me. And I was like,
Oh,
oh my goodness. Like my trying to be, or when Stacy does it, trying to be the supportive spouse to the other person to say, like, hey, we have a united front as parents. My kids don't see that united front. They see us ganging up on them. And I was like, oh, so is that maybe not the space that I need to show that we're on the same page as parents and things like that? And I never would have gotten there if I didn't just sit down to walk alongside the kid and have a conversation. And I think that was what I see in that, and I see in this book is like, the importance of having that dialogue and conversation with the kids is so crucial.
yeah, that's really, really, that's a great story. It's so good. I'm curious as well, like you start off by saying, like about anxiety, that kids will pick up the anxiety of mom or dad, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's true in everything. And who you are matters more than what you say or do, because what you say or do comes out of who you are. So if you're anxious, it's going to affect everything else. So, and I think they do pick up on that. And so I'm curious, uniquely for a dad with a girl around anxiety, and how does that change? If this book was written for a mom with
Mm.
anxious girls, what might be different? I'm
Well,
curious. Why is it for dads?
so this is written for parenting.
For
This is
parenting.
this
Oh,
is
it's not
written
just for
for
dads.
raising anxious
Okay,
free parents.
got
Uh,
it.
I saw an opportunity as a dad of two girls
I got you.
And we have at St. Luke, we have an like it's a great thing, but like we have a lot of just specifically girl dads of that have more than two girls in their family. And so that was the only reason I created the dad group was because I was like, there's a lot of us that are in the same boat of being dads. I think there's only one that has like is a dad in the group that has a boy too. Everyone else is just purely girl dads. And
Okay, gotcha. I
so
got you.
it was more of just seeing kind of the geography, the demographics at St. Luke, and be like, oh, I'm gonna do this because this is me, and I can speak to this as a dad and try and get it. So it's written for from just
For parents.
parenting, but
Okay,
it's
that's
written for
thank,
parenting girls.
yeah. Yeah, my apologies. That thanks for the clarity on that one. So, but so think about the dads in
Yeah,
particular
yeah,
around anxiety. And I'm just curious like how men handle anxiety and what that tells kids too.
yeah.
Like like guys from my perspective having lived 56 years in this skin, that in general guys can swallow our emotions and like pretend it's not there.
Mhm.
We don't wear things on the sleeve very often, and it's still there. It's kind of
Yeah.
like my dad when I was in 11 or probably 10 or 11 years old. We went to a high school football game on a Friday night near our town, and my dad took me, and I was running around with my friends, you know, around under behind the grandstands. My dad would stand along the fence, and he'd watch the game from the fence. And I remember it was a chilly fall night. It was really chilly. And I don't know if he had a jacket on. If he did, it was like a really thin jacket. And I was cold. And I had to come and check in with him. And one time I said to him, Dad, are you cold? And he had his hands stuck in his pockets, his arms like stuck to the side, like they were glued to the side of him, like he was freezing. Dad, are you cold? He goes, No, I'm not cold. I'm like, okay. I mean, and now in my mind, I'm like, you're cold, but you just don't want to admit you're cold. But and that, in some ways, I was learning from my dad. How do you handle that? Just
Yeah.
don't show your vulnerability.
Hmm.
Just be strong, or pretend like you're strong.
Yeah.
So in the face of anxiety, for example, guys might go, "Well, I'm not anxious,"
Yeah.
but there's a lot of anxiety in there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think that's also our jobs as parents of whether you're a guy, whether you're a dad or a mom, of modeling healthy mental health aspects through and through. Because I think the other aspect, there's a book, sorry gang, I do this all the time. This is what I do. There's a book called Guys Are Waffles, Girls Are Spaghettis. And it's a very generic terminology, but the idea is basically like guys can compartmentalize things like little waffle squares.
Oh
Like
yeah.
and like so when you get the syrup, it goes into a little square, and sometimes if it overflows, it'll spill on the others. But for the most part, we can compartmentalize things. Where girls they say girls like spaghetti, where it's like all interwoven, intertwined, like you can't separate that very much. And I think that's where they're trying to get where she gets to without saying it in that format there of in anxiety in the younger in the daughter's aspects here, like it you see it through and interwoven through everything where we as guys have been wired, and society also kind of continues to encourage that wiring of compartmentalizing those things and not letting it all interweave where, you know, if A happens, well then that's fine. I can go about B and think that it's and at least ignore it at the time. Doesn't mean it goes away, but like I'm where I feel like so oftentimes are especially I see in my daughters like that hangs in there and that is interwoven into everything else that's going throughout the day. So I think that's a little bit of what where you see that.
That's interesting. So is that as a dad, I mean, in the conversations with his group, like around anxiety, for example, is it kind of communicate in a way to your daughters that shows the process of working through the anxiety or how it interweaves with like that spaghetti piece
Yeah.
of it, like you're talking about? So you start speaking a different language a little bit,
Yeah.
the language of your daughters, as opposed to the waffles, like we're just going to handle it and compartmentalize it.
Yeah. I think it is like I think the main point throughout the whole book is we've got to work on ourselves just as much as our kids do. And I think very often in society like we can be oh do as I say, not as I do. Well, that doesn't work in parenting. It just doesn't. You can't get away with that aspect. And and kids like my kids are what 9 and 7, almost 9 and now 7. Like I can say I'm not mad at all. They can read through that so quick. They're like, yeah, but your face says otherwise. And I'm like, excuse me, like you're 8. You should not be able to talk like that.
Right.
Um, and so I think it's understanding like we have to be models of that just as well as our kids because it's learned behavior. Whether I've talked to my students in youth ministry before. Like I'm like, I know you all don't want to hear this, but you all act just like your parents. And I know your parents. I know you. You all act just like them. So you think your parents aren't cool? Guess what? I was like, it's the same because we pick up. We're so natural. Like we're going to gravitate to motions, actions, things that they do and things that they model as. And so it's just as important for us to be making sure that we're modeling, how do we handle anxiety? How do we handle disappointment? How do we handle these things so when they come up, our kids see it? Because we can say, "Oh, no, you need to handle it this way." And if we aren't doing it, they're gonna do it the way they see us do it. That's the reality 9 times out of 10.
Really, that's beautiful. I mean, it's really opening up your heart and mind to show the process. It's
Yeah.
like you're showing the behind the scenes stuff,
Yeah.
uh, not just the polished result.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference. Like how does somebody learn how to cook? Well, you learn how to cook by learning from somebody how to put all the ingredients together. You don't learn by just tasting the end product all the time. They go, well, congratulations, and then you got to figure it out on yourself. No,
Right.
you learn by the messiness of that cooking, um, and the processing of emotions and bravery and confidence and disappointments. Yeah, I bet there was a book I read many years ago about the legacy of divorce, and the psychologist who wrote this book did longitudinal studies with families of families that stayed together, families that struggled, families that got divorced, and they interviewed all the kids as the kids were in it, and then as the kids grew up into adulthood, and asking the same questions like, what's the legacy of long-term marriage and divorce on a kid, and so on and so forth. And really fascinating book. I think it's called The 20-Year Legacy of Divorce. Written probably 20 years ago now. But there was a story that just has always stuck out to me. And it was this one guy who had his parents stayed together.
Mm,
He was an adult. So they kept interviewing him, and then this story comes out when he was an adult. He had kids of his own, and they were saying, "So what's been your legacy of your parents' marriage on you and your new family?" Here's what he said. He goes, "Look, when when I was younger, my dad and mom separated for a while. And he said it was scary for me and my brothers and my siblings. It was just really scary. We didn't know what was going on. And my dad moved to an apartment, and he said it just was this unknown. He said, but the turning point was for me when my dad took me aside one day and he said, "Hey, your mom and I are going through a really hard time right now, but it's going to be okay.
mm,
This is a temporary thing. And we are working through it, and we will work through it. And there'll be a different day later on." And he said, when my dad said that to me,
mm.
I went, "Oh, okay." And he was just like, "Okay, my dad's handling it. My mom's handling it too.
Yeah.
Like they're handling it." And but short of that conversation, he's left with nothing, just with his own processing.
Yeah.
But his dad helped him process what was going on to the point where his mom and dad stayed together, worked through it, whatever they were trying to work through. He says, so now when my wife and I are going through hard times, I think about what my dad told me. And I think about how that's affecting my kids and what I could tell my kids if we're going through a hard time. If he said, heaven forbid I have to do that, go that separation route. But regardless, it gives us more courage to face the challenges as a couple that we face because of what my dad told me in the process, that the process he was in. I'm like, that's really powerful. Really cool. And it's, in as small ways is what you're doing with your daughters. That and that book saying, like to me, it's from as I'm interpreting what you're saying from the book, it's like helping them enter those that process
Yeah.
so they can learn and deal with that as well.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is. It's 100% trying to get them to figure out and process stuff and also like win the process those things. Like, there are times of like, we've all been there as parents where, you know, we can't reason with a kid at any point because they are phew, so far down there. And that's when it's like, if they get to that stage, you're not reasoning at that point. You're trying to calm them down because right now they're in fight or flight, and there's no rational reasoning happening at all. And so it's giving you then tools to say, okay, how do we get them into the space then too of like calming down? And you and I went to the 2 years ago, went to uh, the bishop something there was
Yeah.
at one of the
Mhm.
churches and they were talking about mental health stuff
Mhm.
and there's something that and it kind of is utilized in this book too that two of the ladies talked about of where they have their kids in the moment like look around the room, find me 5 things that you can see that are red, give me 4 things that you can hear, give me 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can touch, and in those processes as the kids doing that they're so focused on those other things that you're giving them to do that it's calming them down to reset them to have then a conversation to get where they're at. But you have to get to that spot first. And that like
Yeah.
that even there's so like it's that thing like stuck in my mind and it was a tool that I've been using with my kids that then came up again in here. And it just shows you how like importance of there also is times and places to have those conversations and how we interact in those moments too, because when we can see that our kids are at that stage where they're going you can't reason with them at all. Like whether it's, trying to get them to tie a shoe to go out the door and but they're so far gone that like you're just, whatever, you going on to the yelling or extreme is not going to help anything either. And then you just trying to even rationalize with them isn't going to help. So it's almost like, how do we get their mind to just say, okay, let's pause and then we can address things later. And like, so that also is trying to just process because it's the same, like, we're wired like that still as humans, as adults. There are times where we got to say, you know what? I just need a pause right here because anything you say to me, like, I've been there when someone's says something that sets me off, and I'm like, you know what? You could say anything else right now, and I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
So it would make sense then with our kids who are still processing their mental capacity to process things and handle things too, that it takes them even a little bit more.
Yeah. So the process of, I mean, the process of being a parent is helping those kids learn how to process things. Just as like they need to learn math, they need to
Yep.
learn, all these subjects and just to be mature human beings.
Hmm.
Well, part of that maturity of human beings is helping them process some of these really complex things that are going on, and maybe they're experiencing it for the first time, the depth of it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's walk through it together. Yeah, that's good. Sounds like a great book and great group of guys.
Yeah, if you are a parent, you're listening to this, you're a grandparent, and you're listening to this podcast of just like, and you've got kids, and you don't have to be a dad. You can be mom and grandma. You got a kid. I'm telling you, like this book is a great book. I'll give you my copy. I'll buy you a copy. Like if you think it'll help, because there's been many times where I've been reading this book and like there'll be people pop up in my mind. I'm like, oh, I wonder if like this would be good for this situation that so and so is going through or whatever. As we deal with it in the pastoral roles at the church of because life is tough and life be life in these days, right? Like
Yep,
so,
yep.
I highly recommend it though if you've got young people in your life that you're just like, I would love just extra tools in my belt.
That's great. All right, Greg. As always, thanks for the conversation,
Yeah,
and thanks everybody for listening. And we'll pick it up next week.
sounds good.